Alright, what's going on, guys? In this video we are taking a look at Drew Brees, the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, taking a look at his fantasy prospects heading into 2020, which could be very well his last season. Already looking to start his broadcasting career as soon as he ends his football career. This could be the last year for him. So will this be a swan song or will this be an inevitable cliff? Let's get into it. Hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one, but let's get started. So last year, obviously Drew Brees comes in and is hurt in week 2, misses the next 5 games, comes back in and finishes on an absolute tear from a fantasy standpoint. I feel like a lot of people didn't pay much attention to what he was doing. A, because of Lamar Jackson, but B, because he wasn't ever like ranked up in terms of total points because of the 5 games that he missed. But we'll get into it in a second. Finishes the season with under 3,000 passing yards, 27 passing touchdowns, though. That's pretty crazy considering the amount of games that he missed. Only 4 interceptions, 1 rushing touchdown. Finished with 228.8 fantasy points. That's 22nd, but 20.8 fantasy points per game. And that is including averaging in week 2 where he got hurt in the first quarter against the Rams and only had half of a point. So outside of that game, throw that game out. He had 1 game where he finished as a quarterback 3, game against Atlanta. And he had 1 game where he finished as a quarterback 2, also against Atlanta. Outside of that, he was a quarterback 1 every other week, including 2 weeks where he finished as a top 3 quarterback. So, taking out the game where he got hurt and just looking from week 8 onwards, from weeks 8 to 17, he averaged 22.9 fantasy points per game, which was number 2. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, number 1, finishing as number 2, and doesn't really get respected in that regard. I think there's definitely some reason to expect some regression back to the mean, especially in that touchdown rate, 7.1% touchdown rate. That was number 3. If we're expecting a regression in the touchdown rate for Lamar Jackson, I think it's reasonable to expect it to go back down a little bit for Drew Brees, especially if Alvin Kamara is healthy and he gets back to his touchdown scoring ways. That'll probably bring down the touchdown scoring for Drew Brees. But last year was a massive season for Drew Brees, especially in the touchdown department. He also finished with a 79.6 true completion percentage, which was number 1 in the league. Number 3 in true passer rating at 112. Number 1 in accuracy rating at 7.9. 8.6 adjusted yards per attempt, which was number 2. So finished as a very, very accurate and efficient passer, which is really what we've come to expect from Drew Brees, especially in these past couple years as this team has kind of evolved into a short passing, not a run-heavy team. Like, obviously Alvin Kamara has helped them be able to be more focused and balanced, but Drew Brees is still a volume passer. He's just not pushing the issue anymore, but it hasn't mattered because he's so effective at getting the ball out, getting the ball to Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook, gets Emmanuel Sanders. That's a huge addition that I think is really going to help this team a lot. So I keep going back and forth with whether or not I expect this kind of a tear to continue. Yes, he's getting older. All the political stuff aside with Drew Brees, I don't think that he's going to lose any command or respect from the team from a playing standpoint. So seeing what he did last year, now obviously, going into the playoffs, that was a bit of a disappointment, but I think they could just pick up right where they left off at the end of the season last year. I don't see why Drew Brees wouldn't continue to be a productive quarterback, and he's going super late, at least considering where he would have finished had he played a whole season, and considering that you can still get him around, quarterback 8 to 10 just based on where he's going. There's just a massive tier of quarterbacks there that I like every single one of them. It's hard for me to pick one over another, but again, it just supports the fact that you don't really need to target a quarterback early because you can get a guy like Drew Brees typically in like the 8th or 9th round, and obviously, you can get other quarterbacks in the 10th round or later that will also produce really well. But still, I think Drew Brees is kind of a special case. If he doesn't continue that touchdown rate, it's going to hurt him. That is a given, because that was what was kind of carrying him, because he's not getting the same type of yardage that he used to, but it doesn't matter if he's scoring that many touchdowns. Alvin Kamara coming back could end up throwing a little bit of a wrench in terms of his production. We do have him regressing a bit in the touchdown department, at least on a touchdown rate. Right now we have him at 4,300 passing yards, 32 passing touchdowns, which is still nothing to shake a stick at. But the pace that he was on last year would have put him at around 40. So definitely a little bit of regression there. 6 interceptions, and we give him another rushing touchdown because he always seems to find a way to get one. Still puts him at 294 fantasy points, right up there behind. Have a pretty solid tier 6 or tier of 6 guys with Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and Deshaun Watson. Not necessarily in that order, I just listed the 6 guys. Once you get past that point, a lot of people are clamoring for Josh Allen, but I would much rather have a guy like Drew Brees or Matt Ryan over Josh Allen, a guy that I know and can trust as a passer, especially in 6-point touchdown leagues. Drew Brees sees a massive volume boost in 6-point touchdown scoring leagues. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're looking at your scoring setting and where you're ranking Drew Brees. This could be his last year, but he hasn't shown us any signs of regressing from a talent standpoint, other than obviously not taking nearly as many deep shots. We did note, he only had 3 deep ball attempts per game last year, which was 29th at the position, so he doesn't force the issue much anymore, but it hasn't hurt him. Hasn't hurt the team, and unless they get to a point where they're constantly having to come back, and that wasn't even a problem until the playoffs. The Vikings just have the Saints number for some reason. Would love to do a deep dive into the psychology behind how that happens, but there's something about whenever the Vikings and the Saints play, the Saints just don't. They're not on their best game. So whatever that is, that leaving that aside, I mean, we saw what Drew Brees can still do. Like in the shootout game where they played the 49ers, that looked like vintage Drew Brees. And he hasn't shown any signs of regressing. So why bet against him? As it stands right now, we have him teetering between quarterback 7 and 10, and it seems like anytime we tweak some of the numbers of the players around him, it just changes it ever so slightly. But taking him as your quarterback 7, that might be criminal, and he could end up finishing as a quarterback 2. As he showed last year, he's able to finish with 22.9 fantasy points per game. If he just continues at the same rate, then taking him at the quarterback 7 is criminal. Again, expecting a little bit of regression. I'm not going to do that, but I don't hate it if you take him in, the 8th or 9th round and you get him as your quarterback 1. He could very easily finish above that, and you'll be very satisfied with that decision. So with a guy like Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and now bringing Emmanuel Sanders into the fold, you also have Jared Cook there. It just has great weapons around him. The offensive line has shifted slightly. So the protection may not be as good this year, which could also lead to a little bit of regression as well, but not expecting there to be a massive change to the way that this team plays football, and that's just going to continue to be bringing about more production for Drew Brees. So love Drew Brees this year, targeting him pretty regularly once we get to round 8, and I think you guys should do the same. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video.